I am Madison Reynolds, 32 years old, and until last Tuesday, I thought I had mastered the delicate balance of being a self-made woman, married into Boston's elite. My husband Nicholas comes from old money, but respects my independence. His mother Eleanor, however, sees me as an accessory at best, a mistake at worst. Last Tuesday she marched into my home with 6 country club friends pointed at me like hired help, and announced I would be serving them tea and finger sandwiches for the next 3 hours. When I politely declined, she raised her voice, and everything changed. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you have ever dealt with impossible in-laws. My story begins far from the manicured lawns of Beacon Hill. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Milwaukee, where my parents taught high school and valued education above all else. Their sacrifices allowed me to attend college and eventually earn my MBA. By 28, I had built a respectable career as a marketing executive for a sustainable fashion brand. I was proud of my accomplishments, all earned through hard work and determination. I met Nicholas Reynolds at a charity gala, where my company was sponsoring a table. I was there representing our brand, not looking for romance. Nicholas approached me after my presentation, genuinely interested in our company's ethical sourcing initiatives. He was intelligent, thoughtful, and refreshingly down-to-earth despite his family's wealth. We connected over our shared passion for environmental conservation and social responsibility. Our relationship developed quickly. Within 6 months, we were spending most nights together, either at my downtown apartment or his waterfront condo. Nicholas never flaunted his wealth or made me feel inferior. He admired my independence and respected my career. When he proposed after a year of dating, I said yes without hesitation, believing we would build a life that bridged our different worlds. The first sign of trouble came when we announced our engagement to his family. While his father William seemed cautiously accepting his mother, Eleanor's smile never reached her eyes. At our engagement dinner at their Beacon Hill mansion, she spent the evening questioning my background, emphasizing the words, public school and scholarship, as if they were shameful secrets. Nicholas noticed my discomfort and tried to redirect the conversation, but the tension remained palpable. Wedding planning became a battleground. Eleanor insisted on a lavish ceremony at the Reynolds Country Club, with over 500 guests, most of whom I had never met. She dismissed my suggestions as quaint and unsophisticated. When I stood firm on including my childhood friends as bridesmaids rather than Nicholas's cousins, she told Nicholas I was difficult and unwilling to embrace the Reynolds way. Nicholas initially defended me, telling his mother to respect our choices. However, I noticed his resolve weakening under the constant pressure. He began suggesting compromises that always seemed to favor his mother's vision. "It would mean a lot to my mother" became a phrase I heard frequently. Still, I believed our love was strong enough to overcome these challenges. After the wedding, we moved into a brownstone in Back Bay, a compromise between Nicholas's preference for his family's neighborhood and my desire for some distance from his parents. Despite marrying into wealth, I maintained my career and financial independence, keeping a separate bank account alongside our joint one. Nicholas supported this decision, understanding my need for autonomy. The first 2 years of marriage had their ups and downs. Holiday gatherings at the Reynolds estate were particularly tense, with Eleanor making subtle comments about my career being a charming hobby and questioning when we would start a family so I could settle into real life. Family vacations became contentious when Eleanor would plan activities without consulting me, then act wounded when I declined to participate in all of them. Nicholas struggled with the conflict. He loved both his mother and me, and being caught in the middle wore on him. After a particularly unpleasant Christmas where Eleanor excluded me from the family photo, just for one with the Reynolds blood, I saw something shift in Nicholas. He confronted his mother privately, and while he never shared the full conversation, Eleanor's behavior improved temporarily. Unfortunately, the peace was short-lived. As Eleanor realized Nicholas was establishing boundaries, her tactics changed. She began showing up unannounced at our home, calling with emergencies that required Nicholas's immediate attention, and planning family events that conflicted with my work commitments. The situation escalated when Eleanor began spreading rumors within their social circle. At a fundraiser, I overheard two women discussing how Nicholas had married beneath him and how I was using him to climb socially. When I confronted Nicholas about it, he was upset, but admitted his mother likely started these rumors. For my sanity and safety, I hired Alicia Jenkins, a former military professional, who now worked as a personal assistant with security training. Nicholas thought this was excessive, but respected my decision. Alicia worked from our home office 3 days a week, handling my schedule and providing a buffer against Eleanor's increasingly intrusive behavior. The day before the incident, I was working from home on a major rebranding campaign. The deadline was tight, and I had cleared my schedule to focus completely on finalizing the presentation. Nicholas called to say he would be working late, negotiating an important international contract. I ordered dinner in, and prepared for an evening of uninterrupted work, not knowing that the next day would bring a confrontation that would change everything. Tuesday morning started peacefully. I woke at 6, went for my usual run along the Charles River, and returned home to shower and prepare for another day of focused work. Alicia was scheduled to arrive at noon to help organize materials for my presentation. I settled at my desk in the home office with coffee, ready to dive into the final touches on my project. At exactly 10:15, the doorbell rang. Not expecting anyone, I ignored it, initially assuming it was a package delivery. The ringing continued, becoming more insistent with each passing minute. Annoyed by the interruption, I finally went to answer it, only to hear a key turning in the lock before I reached the door. The door swung open to reveal Eleanor impeccably dressed in a Chanel suit and pearls, her silver hair perfectly styled. Behind her stood 6 women of similar age and attire, all looking expectantly into my home. My mother-in-law had used the emergency key Nicholas had given his parents without our discussion, a key meant for actual emergencies, not social calls. "There you are," Eleanor said, with a tight smile that conveyed anything but warmth. "Ladies, this is Nicholas's wife, Madison. She works in advertising, or something similar." I stood speechless as she introduced her friends one by one. Barbara Thompson, president of the Garden Club; Judith Whitmore, whose husband owned half of Boston's waterfront property; Margaret Prescott, on the board of 3 major charities; Patricia Lancaster, whose family had been in shipping for generations; Diana Livingston, widow of a state senator; and Catherine Montgomery, whose old money credentials were apparently so obvious they needed no explanation. Each woman nodded politely, their expressions ranging from mild curiosity to barely concealed judgment. They carried expensive handbags and wore the subtle jewelry that signified old money. Nothing flashy, just timelessly expensive. We were just at the club for our monthly planning meeting. Eleanor continued, stepping fully into the foyer and gesturing for the others to follow, and I realized we were so close to your little home. I told the ladies all about Nicholas's lovely place and offered them tea here before our next appointment. Before I could respond, Eleanor turned to me with a dismissive wave. "We will be in the sitting room. We will need tea, Earl Grey, not that herbal stuff you drink, and finger sandwiches. Nothing too elaborate, cucumber and cream cheese will do, and perhaps some of those little scones if you have them. We will be here for about 3 hours." The presumption left me momentarily stunned. I was wearing yoga pants and a Northwestern University sweatshirt, my hair pulled back in a messy bun, clearly in work mode at home. My deadline was tomorrow, and I had planned every minute of my day. "Eleanor," I said, keeping my voice level, "I am afraid this is not a good time. I have a major project due tomorrow, and I am working from home specifically to finish it." Eleanor's expression hardened. "Madison, dear, I know your little job is important to you, but family obligations come first. Nicholas would want you to entertain his mother and her friends. It is what any proper wife would do." The friends exchanged glances, a couple shifting uncomfortably. Diana Livingston cleared her throat softly, but said nothing. "My career is not a little job," I replied, feeling heat rise to my face. And while I would be happy to plan a proper visit another time today, simply does not work. I have a deadline. Eleanor laughed, the sound brittle and cold. A deadline. For advertisements. Surely that can wait. These ladies have rearranged their schedules to meet you. The Reynolds family has certain social obligations, which would normally be scheduled in advance, I pointed out, struggling to maintain my composure. Eleanor turned to her friends with an exaggerated sigh. You see what Nicholas has to deal with. No understanding of our ways. Where I come from, a wife would never refuse to welcome her mother-in-law's friends. Where you come from? I said carefully. Guests call before visiting, especially when someone is working. Patricia Lancaster raised her eyebrows at my response, while Catherine Montgomery pressed her lips together in what might have been disapproval or suppressed amusement. Well, Eleanor said, her voice rising slightly, we are here now. Surely you can take a break from your computer games or whatever it is you do all day, to serve us some tea. The condescension in her voice made something snap inside me. All the months of subtle insults and undermining came rushing to the surface. I am sorry, Eleanor, but I cannot and will not be serving tea today. You are welcome to use the kitchen if you would like to prepare something for your friends, but I need to return to my work. Eleanor's face flushed with anger. This is unacceptable. Do you have any idea who these women are? Do you understand what connections like these mean to Nicholas's position in society? I understand perfectly what a scheduled social call means, I replied. And I also understand what an ambush looks like. At this, Barbara Thompson looked down at her hands, clearly uncomfortable. Judith Whitmore whispered something to Margaret Prescott, who nodded slightly. Eleanor stepped closer to me, lowering her voice, but not enough that her friends could not hear. You have never understood your place in this family. Nicholas married beneath him, but we accepted you. The least you could do is show some gratitude and proper manners. I felt a flush of humiliation, aware of the 6 pairs of eyes watching this interaction. Yet I knew if I gave in now, the boundary violations would never end. My place, I asked quietly. My place is as Nicholas's equal partner, not household staff, to be commanded at your whim. Eleanor's eyes widened in shock at my continued resistance. She clearly had expected me to capitulate, especially in front of her friends. I am calling Nicholas, she announced, pulling out her phone. We will see what he has to say about his wife refusing to show basic hospitality to his mother. Eleanor stepped away to make her call her back, rigid with anger. The 6 women stood awkwardly in my foyer, some examining the artwork on the walls, others checking their watches or phones, anything to avoid acknowledging the tension filling the room. Nicholas, darling. Eleanor's voice carried clearly. You will not believe how your wife is behaving. We came for a simple visit, and she is refusing to even offer us tea. In my day, this would be unthinkable. No, we did not call first, but family should always be welcome. Your father would be appalled. I could not hear Nicholas's responses, but Eleanor's increasingly defensive tone suggested he was not immediately taking her side. This gave me a small measure of relief, though I knew how persuasive she could be. Diana Livingston, the senator's widow, stepped toward me while Eleanor was distracted. Perhaps we should reschedule, she suggested quietly. It seems we have caught you at a bad time. Before I could respond, Eleanor whirled around, phone still pressed to her ear. No one is leaving, she declared. Madison simply needs to understand how things work in our circle. Nicholas, she is being deliberately difficult. You need to speak with her. She thrust the phone toward me, but I shook my head. This is between you and me, Eleanor. Nicholas is at work, and so am I. Her face contorted with rage. You, ungrateful girl. After everything the Reynolds family has done for you, lifting you from obscurity, giving you connections you could never have made on your own. Catherine Montgomery cleared her throat. Eleanor, perhaps we should. No, Eleanor cut her off. I will not have my son's wife disrespect me this way. She turned back to me, voice dripping with disdain. What would your parents think of this behavior? Those school teachers who raised you, clearly failed to instill proper respect for your betters. The mention of my parents, hardworking people who had sacrificed everything for my education, ignited something fierce within me. My hands trembled slightly as I reached for my phone. "You have no right to speak about my parents," I said, my voice low but steady. "And you have no right to barge into my home and make demands." As Eleanor opened her mouth to retort, I quickly texted Alicia SOS, mother-in-law situation, home office. Eleanor was now fully on the attack. "When I tell people in our circle about this, no one will invite you anywhere. Do you understand? You are nothing without the Reynolds name. I was someone before I married Nicholas, and I remain that person now," I replied, working to keep my voice even. Nobody from nowhere." Eleanor scoffed, then turned to her friends. "Ladies, let us go into the sitting room. Madison will come to her senses." She started walking toward our living room, clearly expecting everyone to follow. Most did, though, reluctantly, with Diana Livingston and Barbara Thompson exchanging concerned glances. As Eleanor attempted to lead her entourage deeper into my home, I stepped into her path. "I have not invited you past the foyer, Eleanor." Her eyes widened in shock. "You dare to stop me from entering my son's home." "Our home," I corrected. "And yes, I am asking you to respect our space." She moved to push past me, her shoulder bumping mine deliberately. I stood my ground, though my heart was racing. The confrontation was escalating beyond anything I had experienced with her before. Just as Eleanor raised her hand, to gesture, or something more I will never know, the front door opened. Alicia Jenkins stepped in, her expression neutral, but alert. At 5 feet 10 inches with an athletic build and observant eyes that missed nothing, her presence immediately commanded attention. "Good morning," she said calmly. "Is everything all right here, Mrs. Reynolds?" Eleanor froze, turning to face the newcomer. "Who is this? What is going on?" The relief I felt at Alicia's arrival must have shown on my face. "This is Alicia Jenkins, my personal assistant." Alicia surveyed the scene, professionally, then asked in a measured tone, "Is there a problem here, ma'am?" The question, so simple, yet loaded with meaning, hung in the air. Eleanor stared at Alicia, taking in her professional attire and confident stance. "Personal assistant," Eleanor repeated incredulously. "Since when do you need a personal assistant, and why is she interrupting a family matter?" Barbara Thompson touched Eleanor's arm lightly. "Perhaps we should reconvene at the club, Eleanor. They have that lovely new tea service." "I am not leaving until this is resolved," Eleanor insisted, though I noticed Catherine Montgomery and Judith Whitmore were already edging toward the door. Patricia Lancaster checked her watch. "I actually have another appointment soon. Perhaps we should continue this another time." Eleanor looked betrayed as her carefully assembled audience began to disintegrate. "This is precisely why I brought you here, to meet Nicholas's wife and see how she fits into our circle. Clearly she does not." Mrs. Reynolds, Senior Alicia, interjected smoothly. "Madison has an important deadline today. Would you like me to help reschedule a more convenient time for your visit?" The professional formality with which Alicia addressed Eleanor seemed to momentarily confuse her. She was accustomed to household staff and service workers, but Alicia's demeanor made it clear she was neither intimidated nor subservient. "This woman works for you?" Eleanor asked me, disbelief evident in her tone. "Yes," I confirmed. "Alicia helps manage my professional and personal schedule." Eleanor laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "A bodyguard? Really, Madison? How paranoid and dramatic. What would you possibly need protection from?" The irony of her question in that very moment was not lost on me, or apparently on Diana Livingston, who raised an eyebrow significantly. "I am not just a bodyguard, Mrs. Reynolds," Alicia clarified calmly. "I provide comprehensive personal assistance, including schedule management, correspondence handling, and yes, security services when needed." Eleanor's face flushed with indignation. "Security from what? This is Boston's safest neighborhood." I took a deep breath, knowing it was time to address the real issue. The security is not about the neighborhood, Eleanor. It is about establishing boundaries that have been repeatedly crossed. Eleanor gasped dramatically. Are you implying that you need protection from me? Your husband's mother? I am stating that I need my professional and personal boundaries respected, I replied evenly. Alicia helps ensure that happens. Catherine Montgomery was now openly watching with interest, any pretense of discomfort replaced by keen observation. Barbara Thompson looked genuinely uncomfortable, while the others seemed torn between embarrassment and fascination with the unfolding drama. This is absurd, Eleanor declared. I am Eleanor Reynolds. My family has been in Boston society for 6 generations. My husband serves on the boards of 3 major hospitals. I chair the Symphony Fundraising Committee, and my daughter-in-law thinks she needs protection from me. Alicia remained professionally neutral. Mrs. Reynolds Madison has important work to complete today. Perhaps we could help you and your friends arrange transportation back to the country club. Eleanor ignored Alicia, completely focusing her ire on me. You think hiring someone makes you important? I could have a security team here in 5 minutes with one phone call. William knows the police commissioner personally. The threat, however, vague, was enough for Alicia to step slightly closer to me, her training evident in her positioning. That would be unnecessary escalation, Mrs. Reynolds, Alicia said, her tone still respectful but firmer. My phone buzzed with a text from Nicholas' mom called, "Everything okay? Can talk now." Eleanor noticed the notification. That is, Nicholas, is it not? Let me speak to my son. She reached for my phone, but I stepped back, keeping it out of her reach. Eleanor, I said, finding strength. I did not know I had. This has gone on long enough. For 2 years I have tolerated your surprise visits, your backhanded compliments, your attempts to undermine my marriage and my place in Nicholas's life. How dare you, Eleanor sputtered. I dare because this is my home. I dare because I am tired of being treated as an accessory rather than a person. I dare because every time I have attempted to build a relationship with you, you have responded with condescension and hostility. I continued years of pent-up frustration, finally finding voice. You criticized my wedding choices, dismissed my career, spread rumors about me in your social circle, excluded me from family traditions, and consistently tried to make me feel inferior. The country club friends were now watching in stunned silence. Diana Livingston's expression had shifted from discomfort to something resembling respect. Madison has always treated you with respect, Mrs. Reynolds, Alicia added quietly. I have witnessed it firsthand. Eleanor turned to her friends seeking allies. Can you believe this? The help is now speaking for the family. Alicia is not the help, I corrected firmly. She is a valued professional, and more importantly, someone who has shown me more respect in 6 months than you have in 2 years. The sound of a key in the lock interrupted the standoff. Nicholas walked in, his expression concerned, as he took in the scene, his mother and her friends in the foyer, Alicia, standing protectively near me, and the palpable tension in the air. What is going on? He asked, his gaze moving between us. Eleanor immediately rushed to him, her demeanor transforming instantly. Nicholas, darling, I am so glad you are here. Your wife has been incredibly rude to me and my friends. She refused to serve us tea, and then called this person to intimidate us. Nicholas looked at me questioningly. Your mother and her friends showed up unannounced. While I was working, I explained. She demanded I serve them tea and sandwiches for 3 hours, and when I explained I had a deadline, she became hostile. That is not true, Eleanor protested. I was simply trying to include Madison in our social circle to help her understand our customs. Diana Livingston surprised everyone by speaking up. Eleanor did suggest we come without calling first. She said it would be a nice surprise. Eleanor shot Diana a betrayed look. Whose side are you on? I am not on any side, Diana replied calmly. But I do believe in accuracy. Nicholas ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized as a sign of his growing frustration. Mother, did you really expect Madison to drop everything and serve tea without any warning? That is what a proper wife would do, Eleanor insisted. My mother always had tea ready for unexpected guests. It is basic hospitality. It is the 21st century, Nicholas countered. Madison has a career deadline's commitments of her own. Eleanor's expression hardened. So your work calls me crying about my treatment, but you take her side immediately. I am not taking sides, Nicholas said, though his position beside me suggested otherwise. I am trying to understand what happened. I touched his arm gently. Your mother used the emergency key to let herself and 6 strangers into our home, then demanded I serve them as though I were staff. Nicholas turned to his mother, his expression shifting from confusion to anger. You used the emergency key, Mother. That key is for actual emergencies. Family visits are important, Eleanor insisted. And I would hardly call my friends strangers. These are influential people who could help your career, Nicholas. My career is doing fine without using my mother's friends for networking, he replied dryly. Eleanor's eyes widened at Nicholas's response. She clearly had not expected him to challenge her directly. A moment of uncertainty crossed her face before she regrouped. Nicholas, darling, she said, her voice softening to the sweet tone she reserved exclusively for her son. I only want what is best for you, for us as a family. Madison simply does not understand our ways yet. Nicholas shook his head slowly. No, Mother. This is not about Madison understanding our ways. This is about basic respect and boundaries. A tear appeared in Eleanor's eye, strategically timed, I suspected, based on past performances. After everything I have done for you, the sacrifices, the connections, I have maintained to ensure your success. This is how you speak to me. Nicholas remained unmoved by the display. What sacrifices exactly? My success at the firm came from my own work, not your social connections. The 6 country club friends stood awkwardly witnessing this family confrontation. Catherine Montgomery checked her watch pointedly, while Barbara Thompson stared at the floor. Diana Livingston, however, watched with clear interest, her expression suggesting she found the entire situation long overdue. Ladies, Nicholas addressed the group politely but firmly. I apologize that you were brought into this uncomfortable situation. Perhaps it would be best if you continued your meeting back at the club. Judith Whitmore nodded quickly. Yes, I think that would be best. Eleanor, shall we reconvene there? Eleanor ignored her friend's question, still focused on winning back her son's support. Nicholas, you cannot possibly condone your wife calling in security against your own mother. Alicia works for Madison, Nicholas explained patiently. She was scheduled to be here today anyway. A bodyguard, Eleanor exclaimed. As if I would ever harm anyone. The implication is insulting. Nicholas's patience was visibly wearing thin. Mother, you entered our home without permission, made demands of my wife while she was working and refused to leave when asked. How should she have responded? Patricia Lancaster stepped forward. Eleanor, I really must go. Perhaps we should discuss the charity auction another time. Her tone was kind but firm, making it clear she would not stay to witness more of this scene. One by one, the other women murmured similar sentiments, edging toward the door. Only Diana Livingston lingered, her expression thoughtful. As her audience dispersed, Eleanor's composure began to crack. This is your fault, she hissed at me, no longer bothering to hide her hostility. You have turned my son against me. Mother, Nicholas said sharply. That is enough. Madison has done nothing wrong here. You would choose her over your own mother? Eleanor demanded, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. This is not about choosing, Nicholas replied. This is about respect. I love you, but I will not allow you to treat my wife this way. Diana Livingston approached me quietly while Nicholas continued speaking with his mother. For what it is worth, she said in a low voice, not all of us approve of Eleanor's behavior. Some of us have daughter-in-laws too. She slipped a business card into my hand before moving toward the door. The remaining women had now exited, leaving only Eleanor, who seemed torn between continuing her campaign and following her friends. Without her audience, much of her motivation appeared to have evaporated. "I think it is time for you to leave as well," Mother Nicholas said gently but firmly. "We can discuss this another time when everyone is calmer." "I will not be dismissed from my son's home," Eleanor declared, though her voice lacked its earlier conviction. Nicholas sighed deeply. "It is not a dismissal. It is a recognition that this meeting was ill-conceived and has gone poorly for everyone involved." Eleanor looked to Alicia, who had maintained her professional stance throughout the confrontation. "I suppose you are pleased with yourself," she said bitterly, "destroying a mother's relationship with her son." "Ma'am, I am simply doing my job," Alicia responded evenly, ensuring Madison can complete her work without interruption. Nicholas placed a gentle hand on his mother's shoulder. "Mother, please, let me call a car for you." "I drove here," Eleanor said stiffly. "Then, please allow me to walk you to your car," Nicholas offered, providing a dignified exit option. Eleanor hesitated, clearly weighing her options. Finally, with a last venomous glare in my direction, she nodded sharply. "Very well, but this conversation is not over, Nicholas." As Nicholas escorted his mother out, I exchanged a grateful look with Alicia, who nodded in understanding. Once the door closed behind them, I let out a long breath I had not realized I was holding. "Thank you," I said to Alicia. "Your timing was perfect." "Just doing my job, Madison," she replied with a small smile. "Would you like me to stay or give you and Nicholas some privacy when he returns?" "Some privacy would be good," I admitted. "Could you come back tomorrow instead?" "Of course. Call if you need anything." With that, Alicia gathered her things and discreetly left through the back entrance, just as Nicholas was returning from escorting his mother. When Nicholas came back inside, his face was drawn with emotion. Without a word, he crossed the room and embraced me tightly. "I am so sorry," he whispered against my hair. "I had no idea it had gotten this bad." The days following the confrontation were tense but clarifying. Nicholas and I had a long, honest conversation that night about his mother's behavior and our marriage. For the first time, he fully acknowledged the pattern of boundary violations and manipulative tactics that I had been experiencing. "I always knew my mother could be difficult," he admitted, as we sat in our living room sharing a bottle of wine we had been saving for a special occasion. "But I guess I never realized the extent of it, because she behaves differently when I am around." "She has two faces," I agreed. "The devoted mother for you and the critical mother-in-law for me." Nicholas shook his head, looking genuinely distressed. "Why did you not tell me how bad it was getting?" "I tried, Nicholas. Many times. But you would always say things like, 'That is just how she is,' or 'She means well,' or 'Family is complicated.'" The realization seemed to hit him hard. "I gaslit you," he said quietly. "Not intentionally, but effectively." The next morning, the texts and calls began. First from Eleanor, alternating between tearful pleas to Nicholas about her broken heart and scathing messages to me about my lack of respect for family. Then came calls from Nicholas's aunts, cousins, and family friends, all suddenly concerned about the situation. Nicholas, to his credit, responded consistently to everyone. My mother entered our home without permission, disrespected my wife, and refused to leave when asked. "We are taking some space from the situation." His father, William, called 3 days after the incident, requesting to meet with us. Unlike Eleanor, he asked politely if we would be available for dinner the following evening. We agreed, choosing a neutral restaurant rather than either of our homes. William Reynolds was a quieter, more thoughtful version of his son. Over steaks and wine, he listened carefully as Nicholas explained what had happened, occasionally nodding or asking clarifying questions. "Eleanor has always been particular about family matters," William finally said. "Her own mother was extremely traditional and critical. I fear she is repeating patterns she learned long ago." That may explain her behavior, but it does not excuse it, Nicholas responded firmly. William nodded. No, it does not. I have spoken with her about this, though I doubt it made much impact. She believes she is being persecuted for upholding standards. Standards from another century, I added, feeling comfortable enough with my father-in-law to be honest. William surprised me, with a small smile. Indeed. For what it is worth, Madison, I think you have been remarkably patient, more so than I might have been in your position. As we were finishing dessert, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Diana Livingston. Would you be available for coffee next week? I feel we have much to discuss, and I owe you an apology for my part in Tuesday's debacle. I showed Nicholas the message, and he raised his eyebrows in surprise. Diana Livingston is my mother's oldest friend. They have known each other since boarding school. Should I accept? I asked. Absolutely, William interjected. Diana has always been the voice of reason in Eleanor's circle. If she is reaching out, it is significant. The following week brought another unexpected development. Eleanor showed up at my office building downtown demanding to see me. The security team, already alerted by Alicia about potential issues, politely, but firmly refused her entry without an appointment. When Eleanor persisted, becoming loud and disruptive in the lobby, they escorted her out. The incident might have ended there, but Eleanor had chosen to make her stand during a busy lunch hour. Several employees from my company and neighboring businesses witnessed the scene, and by afternoon it was circulating through professional circles that Eleanor Reynolds had been removed from Bedford marketing for causing a disturbance. That evening, Nicholas received a call from his cousin Charlotte, who served on several of the same charity boards as Eleanor. Aunt Eleanor is telling everyone you have banned her from your life and that Madison has hired thugs to keep her away, Charlotte reported. Most people are not buying it, especially after the scene at Bedford marketing. Uncle William is furious. The situation came to a head at a family dinner, the following Sunday at Nicholas's Aunt Beatrice's home. We had initially declined the invitation, sensing a setup, but William called personally to ask us to come, promising to ensure civility. When we arrived, the tension was palpable. Eleanor sat stiffly at one end of the table, barely acknowledging our presence. William greeted us warmly, as did several cousins, though others were clearly uncertain which side to take. Midway through the first course, Aunt Beatrice cleared her throat. I think we need to address the elephant in the room, she announced. This family cannot continue with this level of discord. Eleanor immediately launched into her version of events, painting herself as the victim of an ungrateful daughter-in-law and a disloyal son. When she finished, she looked around the table, expectantly, clearly anticipating support. Instead, Cousin Charlotte spoke up. Aunt Eleanor, with all due respect, you entered their home without permission and made demands. How would you feel if any of us did that to you? Family does not need permission, Eleanor insisted. Yes, they do, William said quietly, but firmly. Everyone does. The conversation continued, sometimes heated, sometimes thoughtful. To my surprise, several family members shared their own experiences with Eleanor's boundary-crossing stories they had never felt comfortable telling before. By dessert, it was clear that while some relatives sympathized with Eleanor's hurt feelings, most recognized that her behavior had been inappropriate. Nicholas held my hand under the table, a small gesture of solidarity that meant everything. 2 days later, Nicholas suggested family therapy. Not because either of us needs fixing, he clarified quickly, but because we could use a neutral third party to help establish healthier patterns with my mother. Eleanor initially refused, calling the idea trendy nonsense and an insult to her parenting. It took William's quiet insistence, and the revelation that he had already started individual therapy himself, to finally convince her to attend one session, just to prove it unnecessary. The first therapy session with Dr. Janelle Freeman was as awkward and tense as expected. Eleanor spent the first 20 minutes listing her grievances, from my failure to properly appreciate family heirlooms to my inappropriate career ambitions. Dr. Freeman listened patiently, then asked a simple question. Eleanor, What do you want your relationship with Madison to look like? The question seemed to catch Eleanor off guard. I want her to respect the Reynolds family traditions and her role as Nicholas's wife. And what does that role entail in your view? Dr. Freeman pressed gently. As Eleanor described her vision, essentially me as a social hostess, prioritizing family obligations above all else. Her words seemed to hang in the air, their outdated nature apparent even to her as she spoke them aloud. That does not sound like the woman your son chose to marry, Doctor, Freeman observed. Eleanor was silent for a long moment before responding in a quieter voice. It does not. It was a small moment, but in it, I saw the first tiny crack in Eleanor's rigid worldview, the first acknowledgement that perhaps her expectations, not my behavior, might be the core issue. 6 months after that Tuesday confrontation, much has changed in our family dynamic. The transformation has not been instantaneous or complete. Real change rarely is, but the progress is undeniable. Eleanor and I will never be best friends, but we have developed a relationship based on mutual respect, if not always mutual understanding. The weekly therapy sessions continued, despite Eleanor's initial reluctance, and gradually evolved from battlefield to actual dialogue. The turning point came during our 5th session, when Dr. Freeman asked Eleanor about her own mother-in-law. The floodgates opened as Eleanor described a woman who had criticized her housekeeping, questioned her parenting, and made her feel perpetually inadequate. I swore I would never be like her, Eleanor admitted, tears streaming down her face. And yet here we are. That recognition, that she had become what she most resented, seemed to shake something loose in Eleanor. While she still occasionally slips into old patterns, she now catches herself more often than not, sometimes even with a rueful smile. We have established clear boundaries that everyone respects. Eleanor calls before visiting. She asks rather than demands. When she forgets, Nicholas gently reminds her, and she actually listens. For my part, I make more effort to include her in appropriate aspects of our lives, now that I no longer feel the need to defend myself constantly against her intrusions. My friendship with Diana Livingston has been an unexpected gift from this difficult chapter. Our coffee meeting revealed a wise, witty woman who had long recognized Eleanor's controlling tendencies, but had never felt it was her place to intervene directly. Diana now serves as an occasional buffer and reality check for Eleanor within their social circle. Eleanor actually listens to Diana, Nicholas observed recently. I think she is the only person besides my father whose opinion she truly values. The most significant change has been in my relationship with Nicholas. The crisis forced us to have conversations we had been avoiding about family dynamics, boundaries, and our vision for our marriage. Without the constant tension of Eleanor's interference, we have rediscovered the connection that brought us together in the first place. Last month we hosted a holiday gathering at our home. A real one, properly planned and invited, with both our families in attendance. My parents, initially wary, after hearing about past conflicts, were pleasantly surprised by Eleanor's cordial behavior. At one point I found Eleanor and my mother Susan in the kitchen, sharing recipes and stories about Nicholas and me as children. The sight was so unexpected that I nearly dropped the plates I was carrying. Your mother is quite knowledgeable about education reform, Eleanor commented later. We had a fascinating discussion about the charter school debate. From Eleanor, this was high praise indeed. I recognized it as an olive branch and accepted it as such. Alicia still works for me, though her role has evolved to focus more on professional assistance than personal security. She and Eleanor have developed an unexpectedly respectful relationship, bonding over a shared interest in classical music that neither of us had anticipated. Last week I received a call from Jennifer Harris, a friend from business school who had recently married into another prominent Boston family. Her mother-in-law was making her life miserable, with constant criticism and boundary violations. How do you handle it? She asked desperately. Everyone says I should just accept it as part of marriage. I shared my experience, and the lessons I had learned, that boundaries are necessary, even with family, that patterns can change, if everyone commits to the work, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for a relationship is to insist on mutual respect. The key was Nicholas supporting me, I told her. Without that, nothing would have changed. Brad always says I am overreacting, Jennifer admitted quietly. You are not, I assured her. Your feelings are valid and healthy boundaries benefit everyone. After we hung up, I reflected on how far we had come. The confrontation that seemed so catastrophic at the moment had ultimately been the catalyst for positive change. By standing my ground that Tuesday morning, I had set in motion a chain of events that transformed not just my relationship with Eleanor, but our entire family dynamic. I will never forget the look on Eleanor's face when Alicia asked, "Is there a problem here, ma'am?" It was the moment someone finally held up a mirror to behavior that had gone unchallenged for too long. There is a profound freedom in establishing boundaries, in refusing to accept disrespect as the price of belonging. The road has not been easy, and the work continues every day, but the peace we have found was worth every difficult conversation, every uncomfortable moment of growth. The greatest lesson I have learned is that family is not just what we are born or marry into, it is what we create together with intention and care. True family honors each member's individuality while fostering connection. It does not demand conformity or subservience. It grows and adapts as its members do. Eleanor may never fully understand or embrace my choices, but she has learned to respect them, and in that respect, imperfect as it may be, we have found a way forward together. Have you ever had to stand up to a family member who crossed your boundaries? What happened when you did? Share your story in the comments below. And if you found value in my experience, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about navigating complex family dynamics. Remember, setting boundaries is not selfish. It is essential for healthy relationships. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to honor your own worth in all your relationships.